In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the fuel injectors on this 2007 to 2013 Chevy Silverado. Let's get into it. We're going to disconnect the battery using a 10mm socket, loosen up the negative terminal. If you need to take this bracket off to access it, you can take these bolts out with a 13mm socket. Otherwise, you can reach underneath. And grab the cable, slide it up and out of the way. Now I'm going to remove the engine cover, just grab underneath here, pop it up and slide it out. Now we're going to take the worm clamps off for the snorkel, use an 8mm socket, loosen that one up. Over near the throttle body, loosen that one up. Now just use a trim tool, separate the coolant hose from this bracket. Move that aside. And there's a vacuum hose right here. Just pop this off. It just comes off. Then just pull the snorkel up and out. Pull it off over here, and then it comes up. Disconnect the map sensor right here, just push down on the tab. And slide it off. Now I'm going to take this nut off, use a 10mm socket. Pull that out, and this bracket is loose. Now we're going to take this plate off, use a 10mm socket, take these two bolts out first. On the back bolt, I'm going to use a 10mm ratchet wrench because you can't access it with a socket. Take that bolt off and take this plate off, slide it out. Disconnect the connector on the alternator right there and just push down on the tab. Then you'll have a little bit of slack with these wires. You're going to pull these up and out of the way. I'm just going to use a bungee cord and just tie it up. Just keep it out of the way. That's good. We want to disconnect the fuel injectors. There is a safety clip. You want to just use a pick, get underneath this clip. And just pull it up. And then you can push on the tab and slide it off. You want to do that till there's 4 on this side and 4 on the other side. If you have to, you can try pulling it up in the front, just like that. And slide those out. And get those all off. And then you're going to do the same on the other side. Take all the connectors off of those injectors. And disconnect this hose right here. There's a little tab on the back. You just slide it to the right and you can pull that off. And then now you can come on this side. Disconnect this connector right here on the purge solenoid. Just slide the tab over, slide it out and out of the way. Taking a straight blade screwdriver, going right in between the bracket and the solenoid. You're going to pry the bracket over a little bit. Then this will slide up. And we can disconnect right here. Just push down, twist it a little bit, and slide the solenoid off. This hose right here, you want to follow this back to where the valve cover is. And then there's another little tab you got to slide, and then you can pull that out. And when you're trying to take this hose off, this cannot pass over this stud. You don't want to bend this out of the way or you could break the plastic. So we're going to take this stud off. Using a 10mm socket, take this off. If you can't get a socket over that, you can just use a 10mm wrench. And take that off. Now take this pipe and we can slide it out like this. And then you can disconnect it right here. It slides right out. In the fuel line, we want to bleed off the pressure, so we're going to take this cap off right there. You want to use a rag or an absorbing mat. Just get underneath here because you're going to lose a little bit of fuel. And then it's always a good idea to wear safety glasses while you're doing this. And then just take a screwdriver or a pick and just on the Schrader valve, just push down. I'm just going to cover it so I don't get splashed. And just a little bit of fuel comes out. It's just to relieve the pressure. It's good. Now I'm going to take this clip off, just grab from the back and slide it forward. That's just a lock or a retainer. Now I'm going to take a rag underneath the fuel line. We're going to disconnect that. You're going to lose a little bit of fuel doing this. And we're going to need a special tool to slide in there. A fuel disconnect tool. Pull the line forward towards the front of the vehicle and push the tool in. Again, you should wear safety glasses doing this. And then with the tool pushed in, then you can grab the line and slide it back. And the line comes off like that. Just put the rag over there, and then I'll just grab the tool, slide the tool off. Now we're gonna remove the bolts for the fuel rail. Use a 8mm socket, and there's 2 bolts on each side. Take these bolts out. And take all those out. Then we're going to grab the fuel rail, and I'm just going to use a small pry bar. Just give it a wiggle. You don't want to pry too quickly or you're going to break some fuel injectors. Just be careful what you're prying on. Just wiggle it on both sides. The injectors are stuck in there pretty good, so I'm struggling with that a little bit. What we're going to do is take the clips off the top part of the injector where the injector goes into the fuel rail. And if you use a pick, you can slide that back, maybe even some needle nose pliers. You can grab the clips and take those off. Yep, there's the clip. Those clips just slide off towards this way, towards the center of the engine. So we're going to take all of those off, and then we'll separate the fuel rail from the injectors. The injectors are going to stay in the intake. That's all on this side. Do the same on the other side. And now, again, we're just going to try to grab the fuel rail, give it a wiggle, just try to pry up a little bit. And the fuel injectors should stay. Make sure you put some more rags down because you are going to have some fuel coming out. You can push down on the injector and just pull the rail. It makes it a little easier. There we go. And there's the fuel rail. Oh, some of the injectors came up with it. That's okay. That's the way they should come. You should have all of them come up like that, but sometimes they don't. Then you can grab the injector, just wiggle it, and it should slide right out. Now just grab these injectors, wiggle them, slide those out. I'm going to keep them in order. With the fuel rail like this, what you want to do is take a pick and take the clip off, assuming all the injectors stayed in the rail. Clip comes off, and then just grab the fuel injector, just give it a wiggle. Might want to twist it a little bit, and it'll slide out like that. Sometimes the O-ring gets stuck in there. Just take a pick. Just get underneath here. You want to be careful not to scratch the fuel rail. Pull those out. You just take a rag, clean it out a little bit. Make sure there's no corrosion or dirt or dust in there. You take the new fuel injector. Just take a small amount of silicone lubricant, put it on the O-ring. Both O-rings. Then we'll slide the injector in place very carefully, making sure it's not going to roll. And take the clip, line it up, lock it down. That looks good. Make sure the connector's on this side, towards the outside of the fuel rail, and then you're going to do the same with the other ones. Any injectors that you're not going to be replacing, you should replace both O-rings, the one on the top. Just slide it over, and then the same with the lower one. Just use a pick, take it off, and put a new O-ring on. last one. It's lined up. All right, now we can reinstall the fuel rail. Just using a rag, I'm just going to clean out the holes for the injectors. Just try not to get any debris down in the holes. And just slide this in place. Get all the injectors lined up. And it should be fairly easy to just push these down. Push them down on the other side. There we go. Once they're all seated, then you want to put the bolts in. Just make sure it's all the way seated before you put the bolts in. You don't want the bolts to push the injectors in, or you could damage the fuel injectors or the fuel rail. So. Now tighten these down. Just snug them up. And take the fuel line, line that up, and lock it down. You can take that lock, it's going to go on this side, and lock that down as well. I take this tube, slide this in position here, and then twist it. Go around the other tubes. And then you want to attach that to the valve cover in the back. And just lock that in place. Now put this stud in here. And snug that down. This bracket right here where we bent this tab, we just need to bend it back. Just use a straight blade screwdriver. Just bend it back a little bit. That should be good. You can take this solenoid, line this up, lock it into the hose, and push it down on the bracket. And then the hose over here goes on the intake, lock that down. Now I'm just going to take the bungee cord off, move the wires back in position. Those are all in position. Now we'll start connecting connectors. We got the map sensor right here. Lock that in. The alternator, plug that in. This wire goes to the solenoid right here. Connect that. Then you have the fuel injectors. Now line the fuel injectors up and push those in. Push the locks on. And lock them down. Make sure you put them in the right spot because you can swap them by accident. Those are all in. Do the other side. And lock these down. That looks good. And the alternator wire. Take that nut off. And attach that cable. And I'll snug that down. And snug that up. Now put that cover back on. Right there. Put the nut on, and we'll tighten that down. Snug it up. And put this bracket on. And put the bolts in. And tighten those down. And snug that up. And take the cap, put the cap on the fuel rail. And the connector for the throttle body, line that up. Lock that in. Now take the snorkel, line this up. Put it over the air box. And on the throttle body. And push it down. You can take this hose right here, line that up. Lock that in place. And the coolant hose, push that retainer in there, right there, and tighten the worm clamps down. Now put the cover on, and line it up in the back. And then push it down. Now take the negative cable and hook up the battery. And we'll tighten that down. And snug that up. You can grab the cable, give it a wiggle, make sure it's tight. Now that we're done, we're gonna go to the ignition, turn the key on, and then shut it off. And then turn the key on again. That's gonna prime the fuel system because right now the fuel system's empty. There's air in there and it's not gonna start up right away. So you wanna cycle it 2 or 3 times and then you can start it up like normal.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.